Imagine if you could see tomorrow's accidents today and stop it. Not with a crystal ball, but with AI that's already analysed 7 billion real-world driving patterns. It's spotted patterns across 106 countries, from city streets in Sydney to country roads in Sweden. And it's revealing something bigger than just speeding and braking. It's teaching us about human nature itself. Welcome to the first episode of the Safe Lane podcast, brought to you by Fuse Fleet and Car Rental Insurance, where we go behind the wheel, behind the data, and into the decisions that making driving safer or riskier. I'm your host, Simon Donovan, and today I'm joined by Johan Forseke, head of APAC at Greater Than. Johan's team have crunched more driving data than anyone on the planet, and the results are not what you think. Johan, welcome.
Hi, Simon. It's great to be here.
Well, before we talk tech, AI, and all the jaw-dropping patterns you've seen, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yes, of course. So I've worked at Greater Than for 7 years now. I'm originally from Sweden. I've lived more or less across the world. So all the way in US to UK to Spain, Bangkok, Singapore. And I think what's interesting talking road safety is that I've really seen the global aspect of it, and especially the different attitudes to road safety you can see across the world. So at my years at Greater Than, where I've been for 7 years, I've been in Singapore for 6 years, and I've been managing our business here in the APAC region. So worked mostly with insurers, mobility companies, fleets, and automotive manufacturers.
Now, what led you into the world of mobility tech and driving behaviour analytics? Was there a moment in your own driving or looking at any data you thought, wow, this could really change the way people drive?
Yes, definitely. There's been a few wow moments at my years at Greater Than, and I'll just do a quick explanation of what we do first. So we're a data analytics company, and we're specialized in measuring the driver's impact on the road, and that's from two perspectives. So one is from a road safety perspective, where we measure a driver's likelihood of being involved in an accident, and from the second perspective is from a climate perspective, where we measure what the climate impact is of a driver. And I'd say my aha or wow moments at Greater Than, firstly, it's been just to see the prediction accuracy that our technology has. When we say a high-risk driver is very likely to have an accident, and then it turns out that, unfortunately, this driver is involved in an accident. There's been a lot of these, of course, but I'd say mainly it's around our risk intelligence and our AI's sensitivity of its analysis, how quickly it changes, especially when you take in, I wouldn't call it, but yeah, probably psychological factors. I've seen myself in my own driving that the same stretch I do every day, a 10, 15-minute stretch, and I drive it overall quite safe. And then this one day, my risk increases by 30, 40%. And I think back at it and I look, wow, I was really stressed because I was trying to make a meeting in time, for example. Yeah. And when I see this, the sensitivity and how it relates to the real world as well, that's when I really see that this can really change the world and improve road safety globally.
Let's get into the details and specifically about the state of the world's roads. So we see 1.2 million lives lost every year, tens of millions injured. And are we really stuck in the same patterns that we've been following for decades, or is there a shift that you see?
I'd say that there is a shift happening. And I think if you look globally on these statistics, they have been going down. I don't know exactly, but I was reading something from 2010. It's gone down with 5%.
Wow.
I don't know the exact figures, but it's of course not enough. Yeah. I don't think anyone deserves a pat on the back just yet. And when you look at the private side of it, when you look at fleets or organizations, for example, and I can imagine you see this as well, that when you see a bigger improvement in road safety and organization taking it more seriously, when there's a clear financial incentive for it. Yeah. So road safety is more of it's a cost issue rather than a social issue. And I'd say it makes sense, of course, as well. So when you have if you're trying to drive road safety initiatives or risk mitigation initiatives in an organization, you really got to look at the ROI side of it. And that's probably the easiest way to drive through
you've got
these
decision
changes.
Makers that are looking at the cost.
Exactly.
CFOs, CEOs. Yeah, okay. That's interesting.
Probably where you see the biggest improvements as well from it.
In terms of behaviours now, we know from our own experience, and you mentioned upon it a moment ago when you're different scenarios, you're maybe running late for a meeting. What kind of behaviours does greater than see consistently coming up, and how can we manage those behaviours?
We see, and I'd say one is distraction and stress. And the tough things when it comes to distraction and stress as well is that it's tough to regulate. It's close to impossible to regulate. Fatigue, you can work with, if you're working in logistics or whatever type of fleet you have, you can optimize scheduling when you drive, and you're usually feeling tired before jumping into the vehicle, so you can think, all right, should I really be driving now? Distraction and stress is tough because it's something that can also just pop up while you're driving, and you can't really regulate it.
The cars are full of distractions, aren't they? Whether it be children, technology in the car, even the large road signs now. Okay, interesting.
And we see that as well, like you mentioned, having co-passengers or children, especially when people are, for example, dropping off their kids at school. You see quite a big difference in risk when they're dropping off the kids versus when they're going back without kids.
We've just been in a boardroom this afternoon, and we've been looking at various patterns with the greater than technology, and most of the higher risk trips are when parents are going to pick up their kids, not when they're in the car, but on the way to pick up the children, because predominantly people are leaving maybe a couple of minutes late. Okay, that makes total sense. So, all right, okay. And obviously, I suppose speeding, it seems like we're obsessed here in Australia around speeding and the link to potential accidents. Do you see speed as a major factor, or is it more around the speed control? How does speed factor in?
Yeah, and because you see, and I think that's quite obvious, that the higher speed you go, the more severe the accident will be, the bigger the impact it will be. But what we see is that it's harder to control the vehicle at higher speeds. So you have some drivers that are insanely good driver from a safety perspective, and they can handle high speeds. They could go 120 on the motorway and still manage that speed. But for an average driver like me, it's very tough to manage that speed. So you want to drive for what you're comfortable with.
Drive within your comfort. It'd be interesting to look at the stats around accidents on, say, the autobahns in places like Germany, because obviously they have different speed limits to most countries. But I'm sure the stats there support.
Sorry for interrupting you now, because now I got very excited. We actually had, this was probably 15 years ago, we actually had back then was a Formula 1 driver, Marcus Ericsson, Swedish. So he actually drove with our technology, and he was driving on a track then as well. And he was going at very high speeds, but still managed to drive comparably safely. And he's a Formula 1 driver. He knows how to handle the
within
vehicle.
His comfort. Yeah, makes sense. There's some stats here that I think to support that. Fatigue is linked to between 20 and 30% of fatal crashes in developed countries, whilst distracted driving accounts for 1 in 3 serious crashes. So absolutely support what you've talked about. Now, just in terms of those behaviours, is there one that is harder to change than another? I mean, speeding, you can keep an eye on your speedo. Is there one factor that's the hardest to change?
I would keep it to stress and distracted driving, because distracted driving can usually be a factor of stress as well. You're stressed, you're thinking about something. And I saw this figure, this was from US, I think, and it said, it's probably different around the world, and sometimes it's hard to factor in when it comes to the accident, but they said 63% of their accidents was caused by distracted driving. And of those, only 12% of cell phone usage.
Okay.
So what they saw as one of the leading causes of it was daydreaming, mind wandering out on the road. And that's really tough to regulate. And that's one of the areas that we work in as well, to measure distraction patterns in drivers as well. And it's a lot about making them aware when this is happening. And you can probably imagine as well, it's driving to work, driving from work. You're thinking about work. That's for how it is for a lot of people as well.
Do you think that correlates with most people realize that the last sort of 5 minutes of your drive as you're coming home are often the highest risk because you're more comfortable with the road, you know the area,
Yes. Yeah.
you're not mindful of the road, you might be thinking about the family, the kids.
Exactly. I think there's two sides to that one, because you have one portion of it, they are very comfortable with the road. And that means that they will drive safer there because they know every turn. So, they can manage their speeds. They manage their driving very well. But then you have the other side of people that gets too comfortable in their home turf, territory, and then not paying attention to their driving there. Usually picks up the phone there as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So my dad used to say, confidence is a feeling before you fall flat on your face.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
Let's move on to AI, and it's a big component of your sort of value add and what we're doing here at Fuse Fleet and car rental insurance. But for a lot of people, telematics and insurance go hand in hand, but not necessarily in a good way. And there's an assumption that if your driving is tracked, your premiums tend to go up. So it's that sharing of data from a client broker perspective.
Yeah.
Often they believe it's going to negatively influence the policy. But what you're doing here at Greater Than is completely different. For someone who's never heard of pattern AI, how does comparing my trip to billions of others actually help predict my crash risk and in some cases lower it?
That's a great question, and this is one of the areas that I love talking about, so I can probably make this a 3-hour podcast, just me talking about our AI. Let's not, because that probably wouldn't be too interesting, but we work with something called pattern profiling. So since 2004, we've been training our AI with real driver data, and we've been gathering if there's been any accident outcome with this driving data. And we only use GPS data for this analysis, and we create patterns out of this GPS data. And we create different patterns that we call different driving styles. So when you're out driving, we measure your data and we create a pattern of your driving and we compare it to our database. And we ask, have we seen this type of pattern, this type of driving style before? And then the AI returns and says, yes, we have, and the accident outcome is XYZ. And then we quantify that number in different ways.
Yeah. And that's it. I remember when you first spoke to me about it, 2004 is a long time ago. And, every AI is now the buzzword and everyone's using AI most days, certainly through things like ChatGPT. But the fact that your business has been involved in AI for over 20 years sort of semi-blows my mind. So it gives us some comfort.
Yeah, it was a bit of an uphill battle in the beginning explaining AI to people.
Yes.
Now it's a lot
including
easier.
Me from memory.
Exactly,
including me. Well, that's fantastic. So in terms of the data and the analysis, what are the sort of early signs that a driver is high risk? So how do we flag it before it happens?
So I'd say our technology, I like to compare it a little bit towards a scale. A weighing scale, you get you step on the scale, you get your benchmark, you get your measurements, you know where you're at.
Yeah.
And from there, you can start affecting your driving and see the result with our AI. Some of the early warning signs, and you see it quite a lot, is, as I mentioned before, since it's so sensitive, you see a driver that's been driving with low risk for the last couple of months, but then suddenly you see some trips and some days the risk slowly starts increasing. And this can quite easily go under the radar because you just view it and you see, oh, this is a low-risk driver, that's fine. But then slow and steadily, they're increasing the risk. And what we see a lot as well, so I only see the data. I don't talk to all the people that we're analyzing, but the few times that I've done, and when you hear the real story behind what's causing their high risk, there's things happening in their private life that is affecting their risk on the road as well.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that you want to put this driver on driver training, for example, when it's just a matter of fact.
Well, we talked about it today. You only sort of can give your examples at times. And I moved house recently from the city to a new house in a new, more rural area. My driver risk score has doubled since I moved in a negative way, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to understand that. But like you said, I think moving house is one of the most stressful things you can do in your life. So to move house to an area that's inherently windier roads than maybe city driving, I now understand that those drivers, or those journeys are higher risk. But I believe from my understanding is they tend to level out over time as I become more comfortable with the roads.
We're going to keep an extra eye on
you. Please do.
To make sure it levels out. Otherwise,
my wife will be very happy with that. Going back to the AI, because it is fascinating, and I've got a pretty good understanding of it, as much as I can anyway, but there's heaps of data, billions of trips of data. And I suppose this is where AI really comes into its own. But there is this sort of, is it replacing, the human nature of things? And in this example, is there anything that your AI can do in terms of analysis that maybe a human couldn't do in terms of analysis of that data?
Well, I would say the obvious one is that it's comparing your driving towards 7 billion different driving styles, more or less at the same time.
Yeah, wow.
So that's tough for a human to do.
Yes.
It's a long Excel sheet.
Yeah, that's a busy bee,
Yeah. Secondly, I'd say we have good correlation in our crash probability scoring towards also these minor type of accidents, parking related accidents, even like windshield damages, for example. And those are really, really hard when you're just looking at a person's driving and then you say, oh, he or she will be involved in a parking accident, because they're not
undetected almost.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say that's also one of the things that makes us really unique as well, that we still have that correlation to these types of accidents.
Just a couple of stats to back up. We've seen, or global research suggests that fleets that use predictive AI have seen upwards of a 25% reduction in major claims. Now, we've been using your technology for 24 months pretty much, and we have seen fleets reduce accident frequency by over 50%. Because of what you said, it's that predictive nature of risk management that, as far as we can see, doesn't exist outside of this sort of pattern profiling. So So Johan, let's move on and talk about the youngest drivers on the road. In Australia, 17 to 24-year-olds make up just 15% of licence holders, yet account for a quarter of road deaths. Let that sink. Nearly 80% of P-platers admit to risky driving in their last 10 trips. That is all bad news. Now, in the UK, things look different. 4 in 5 new drivers are on the telematics policy within just 6 months. Crash rates dropped by 40%. Serious injuries have fallen by 35% in less than a decade. It seems as though the UK are getting it right around data. Now, do you see any patterns from your extensive travels and maybe from Northern Europe around improvements around data on young drivers specifically, Johan?
So I don't sit, when we analyze data, we always do it unbiasedly. So we don't look at who the driver is, what type of vehicle they're driving. We always just do the analysis unbiasedly. With that said, there are groups that have, when you see the risk spectrum of the group, that have a higher amount of high-risk driver and a lower amount of low-risk driver. But with that said, we see that in all groups, you still have the both ends of the spectra. And I think when it comes to young drivers especially, they can be penalized just because they're young and because as the group itself is overrepresented with accidents as well.
Yeah, look, it's interesting from just a pure underwriting background. We write 350, 400 policies where young drivers are always penalized on excess. And particularly, young drivers from 18 to 21 are always higher risk. When we see accident data from our portfolio, it's always overrepresented from under 25. And then it gets even more, challenging when you get from that 18 to 21. So with the stats are there, we know that young people have disproportionate number of accidents. It sounds like the UK is leading potentially globally. We know that in Australia, they've tried to look at this before. And if you know anything about our country, Johan, because of the way that the country's split by state, it looks like it's difficult to change on a large scale because of the nature of the different governments. But we do know that there are road rules around mobile usage, Apple CarPlay for young drivers. So there is, I suppose, a risk management framework that Australia has.
Definitely,
but we're still missing out on that additional data-driven approach. So do you think there's anything, or is there any advice that you see from your global lens around what Australia could be doing differently with the young drivers?
Well, I think what they're doing in UK sounds good, and replicating that here is one idea straight off the bat.
Yep.
Sorry for that one, I continue.
Yeah.
But to start looking at the actual driver risk of the young drivers, and especially since they're new to the roads, they're not as comfortable driving, and especially in busy areas and on highways, I think launching these type of new insurance products for them would be great.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a onus on us in the insurance industry to do more.
Yeah.
I think there's an onus on mums and dads out there to do more, and we're really passionate about working with these programs. And we actually work with the National Road Safety Partnership Program, and we're looking to try and influence the way people drive vehicles, not just from the young drivers, but all drivers, being more aware of this. Distraction seems to be the root cause of a lot of accidents these days.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you've got a young driver in your household, please reach out to Fuse Fleet or Car Rental Insurance. We'll give you access to the Greater Than app, and that will give you feedback on your children and, make it fun around the house with the mums and dads and the kids. We do it here in the office.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I feel if you get enough people signing up and using it, we can create a leaderboard specifically for them as well.
Nice.
Young driver leaderboard.
Okay, well, that's a challenge to all the listeners or anyone who really wants to sort of take this further. Yeah, embrace there's a free app.
Yeah.
We'll give access to the app, and you can then start managing risk and understanding how your kids drive.
Yes.
How you drive as well, and inevitably how you compete against your partner in the house. Cause
Have
that's
a
what we tend
family
to
household competition. It's like Monopoly night. Yeah.
So, Johan, what kind of impact can this kind of real-time AI-driven feedback make in just the first few months?
We've seen it can have if the driver is, or the person receiving the data, it's all about them being receptive to receive that data, of course. And I think when you present the data in a way, because for a lot of drivers, they know how to drive safe, but like we talked about, sometimes they can be overconfident, or they're stressed, or they're tired when they're driving. So it's about making them aware if they are high-risk driver, when they are high-risk driver. That's something we've seen. We see, like we talked about, is when you're dropping off your kids or picking up your kids, for example. So it's about making them aware of this. And we've tried to make it in the easiest way possible to understand your driving. So we work with something called our feedback scores, which measures how well you're focusing throughout your trip and how well you're planning your driving, and also how well you're managing speed to circumstance. And when you start getting these figures, and especially into relation of time of day or day of week, you can start understanding that, all right, Monday morning, I seem quite stressed when I'm driving. And that's something I see for quite a lot of people, that Monday morning driving to work, that's not the most fun trip. So maybe it's good. A lot of people work from home from Mondays maybe.
Support that all business owners, let your staff work from home Monday, and Fridays.
Yeah, exactly. And then the rest. That's a low-hanging fruit, possibly.
But isn't it on Friday afternoon? I think when I spoke to your team, Friday afternoons can also be one of the highest risks.
Yes.
Is that people are just a bit excited to get home?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you probably know it yourself as well. It's Friday afternoon, you're finally done with work, and you have a beer waiting for you at home.
Yeah.
You're stressed to go and get that one. Maybe we'll cut that one out, but it's the truth.
Okay. Look, a few stats here around young drivers to support what we're talking about. Young drivers are 4 more times likely to be in a fatal crash than those aged 26 to 39. That's insane. 80% of UK drivers under 25 use telematics, with crash rates dropping by up to 40% in 6 months.
Wow,
Australia,
really
we need to act. These stats are so compelling. It's hard not to want to take it further. Real-time driving feedback reduces risky behaviour by 32% in the first 3 months.
Yeah.
So these are global stats. So it's hard to argue with any of this when we're talking about the people we love most. Johan, let's move on to the FIA Smart Driving Challenge. Now, I reference this because it sounds like it's given you heaps of data that supported the pattern profiling. And again, as we've talked about, it's only as good as the data that you're receiving from greater than, and then what we do with it from an analytics point of view. So tell us a little bit about the FIA Smart Challenge. I won't pronounce what the script in front of me is. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile.
I think that was a very good. Your French is very good, and
Thank
I won't
you.
say
is that French?
either.
I didn't know it was French.
Yeah, it is. So the FIA Smart Driving Challenge, FIA SDC for short, it's a initiative and a project and a competition that Greater Than and the FIA have launched together. So it's regulated by the FIA, which is the world governing body for not all, but most motorsports. So it's one of the largest mobility. It is the largest mobility organization in the world. And it's a competition for everyday drivers. And we measure how safe you're driving, but also how eco-friendly you're driving.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, so it's all done via app. People download the app, sign up, and then start driving. And then they're directly in the challenge, in the leaderboard, and competing against driver all across the globe.
Awesome.
That's quite cool. In real time, you see people all the way from Hong Kong, in Sweden, and South Africa competing at the same time.
Wow. Well, it's back to this sort of best way to drive outcome from what we've heard today and from what I've seen is just this competition.
Yes.
My understanding that it's 92 countries cut the average emissions or battery use by 9%, and the live final winner slashed theirs by a third in one day.
Yeah.
Which leads me on to this sort of link between what you call crash probability or how you drive the vehicle and sort of eco or environmentally friendly driving. What is that link, and are they connected?
Yeah, so when you look at eco driving and so driving safe and driving energy efficient, I don't know the exact number now, so don't quote me on it, but I think it's roughly like 90% linked or have a correlation of 90%. So if you drive eco-friendly, at most times you will also drive safe, but you have some outliers on both ends there. So you're driving safe, but you're not driving eco-friendly, and you're driving eco-friendly, but you're not driving safe. And one example that you can probably relate to is if you're going into an intersection, for example, and you've sped up and you're going downhill even, for example, from an eco-friendly point of view, you want to save that momentum that you have invested in and gained. So when you come into this intersection and you're coming a little bit too fast, from an eco-friendly point of view, you just want to let the vehicle roll and use that energy that you've created. But from a safety perspective, you want to slow down there because you don't know if a car will come out from the right or left, for example. So you have these outliers where they're not connected and they can even be opposite of each other. But overall, they are heavily linked.
So going back to the competition, how does a competitive format like this change driver behavior compared to a one-on-one coaching or a traditional driver training?
So we've seen it's had really positive effect. I think, you mentioned some of those really interesting and impactful figures before that overall for everyone involved reduced their emissions by 9%. And we see there's three types of drivers that we see. So there's one that loves competition and they want to compare towards others. They want to know, all right, I'm in the top 5%, I'm in the top 10%, I'm that good. Second one is the financially driven driver. If they have an incentive to drive safer, they will drive safer. And the third one loves to compete against themselves. Right. I'd say that's more me. Like, I want to know where my benchmark is, and I want to see if I'm improved. But that's really the three types of drivers that we've seen. And when it comes to gamification and comparing people to others, it really has a positive impact on safety and eco-friendly driving as well.
If there is any brokers out there or any fleet customers wanting to run a challenge, we'd be happy to set that up at no cost. And we may even throw a prize in there to support
That sounds good, yeah.
Just some stats to support. Eco driving reduces fuel use and emissions by 10 to 15% on average, while also lowering crash risk. Drivers in eco driving trials cut harsh braking by 23% and speeding by 14%. Right, Johan, let's move on to the final section. So one stat I love is that if you target the riskiest 5% of drivers in a fleet, you can reduce major claims by around 20%. For me, that's a powerful stat. I'd be interested to know where this statistic came from.
Yeah, so we're always looking at to understand what the prediction accuracy of our risk intelligence is. And those figures are actually based on our global average findings. So we see that we can target the 5% of drivers in your fleet or within a group that will cause up to 20% of your major claims in the coming months. So that's basically the potential that you have. You can target the 5% riskiest drivers, we'll say who they are, and from there you can then reduce up to 20% of your major claims.
Most businesses are aware of the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And I think that the data can be overwhelming. So being able to pinpoint just a small sample of drivers that cause that risk is really what insurers and underwriters and brokers are looking at.
Yeah.
I often talk about quick wins, which sounds short term, but I believe that, you know, if we're gonna get the success, brokers and underwriters and fleets want to see, you know, results in the first 12 months. Is there one thing that you could start doing tomorrow that would cut the risk dramatically? What's that one thing?
So I'd say the important piece from our perspective, and we've seen where fleets or organizations have had the biggest impact, it's about just start measuring your fleet's risk. Because then you get your benchmark, then you know where you lie and compare towards other fleets or towards the world average. And from there, you can really start. And then you have, okay, here is where we're at, here is where we want to be. And then start working on the drivers that need it, or start encouraging the drivers that really don't need it, that are not driving your risk.
Got you. So does that manage what you measure?
Exactly, yeah.
And you need the data, and you need to understand what the driver's doing, and then you can change the behaviour, and then you change the risk. So it's all
correct.
Okay, great advice. Is there a certain behaviour of a driver type that you'd keep an eye on first?
Yeah, so I'd say all high-risk drivers are equally important to act on.
Yeah.
But what you do, how you act on these high-risk drivers, I'd say it's equally important. Because you have some drivers, and they are at a high risk of being involved in an accident, but that's just because they're driving so much, and they're driving so much more than the average within the fleet. There, you really just want to make sure that their behavior portion of their driver remains stable and they don't start driving risky when they're out doing all these miles. Yeah. Secondly, I'd say when you have these drivers that's fluctuating a lot, that's really that's the type of driver I am as well. I fluctuate a lot in my risk. I'm very, stress in my life gets directly reflected into my risk when I'm driving.
What is it Jerome says? You drive like you are. What's the expression? How you feel is how you drive.
Exactly. It's something like that. Yeah. And it's so true. And then it's really about making these drivers aware, or making yourself aware when it's happening. So before you sit down in the car and start driving, that you know, all right, this is one of the situations I'm prone to driving more risky.
Yeah. I mean, look.
So it's really how you act on it. It's not just driver training for everyone.
Yeah. It's an awareness, isn't it? Awareness of how you're feeling before you get in your vehicle. One of the stats that you guys have helped us with is that 15% of drivers cause 50% of accidents.
Exactly, yeah.
And again, another stat from Jerome at the National Road Safety Partnership Program is 80% of drivers think they're the best drivers. They have no problem, which is obviously incorrect. So there is this misalignment on the road today. So,
definitely.
Johan, thank you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me here as well. It's been really, really interesting, and it's an important topic to talk about as well.
Absolutely. So, Johan, 7 billion driving patterns, 106 countries, and enough human behaviour data to fill a library. If there's one thing you want listeners to remember about this, what is it?
So this might be, I don't think it's a bold statement, but maybe it is a bold statement. But I think the average driver, they know how to drive safe. People that have a driving license and they're out driving frequently, they know how to drive safe. So for a lot of the high-risk drivers I see as well, they don't need necessarily driver training. So I think I was talking a little bit about this before, but most drivers can drive below the current average that we see. It's really about making you aware of when and what is causing your high risk, and making sure that you're driving in speeds that you're comfortable in, keeping focus on the road, not becoming too overconfident as well.
That's it for our very first episode of the Safe Lane podcast by Fuse Fleet and Car Rental Insurance. Huge thanks to Johan and team at Greater Than for joining us. Thanks, mate. Really appreciate it.
Same here. It was really fun.
We've learnt a lot. We've discussed a lot, and it's a hugely important topic. So
Definitely.
if you liked what you heard, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube Music. New episodes drop quarterly, so hit that follow button to stay in the loop. And if you're a fleet manager, broker, or part of a motor insurance world, we'd love to hear what's on your radar. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and stay in the safe lane.